So we're going to jump right into the video. Starting at number 10, here we have living things formed from water. And the Quran says, "Do those who disbelieve not see that the heavens and the earth were sewn together, and then we unstitched them, and that we made from water every living thing? So will they not then believe?" And that's taken from Surah 21 verses 30. Also in Surah 24 verses 45, it says, "Allah created every living creature from water." Geological studies have confirmed that water is not only the first and the main compound in all living things, but also it precedes the existence of all created beings. Next up at number 9, we have the duality of creation. The Quran specifically says, "And it is He who spread out the earth and set thereon mountains standing firm and flowing rivers, and the fruit of every kind He made in pairs, 2 and 2, male and female. He draws the night as a veil over the day. Behold, verily in these things are signs for those who reflect." This is taken from Surah 13 verses 3. Here we see things created in pairs. Now there's another verse in the Quran that says, "He who has made for you the earth like a carpet spread out, has enabled you to go about therein by roads and channels, and has sent down water from the sky. With it we have produced diverse pairs of plants." And that's taken from Surah 20 verses 53. The Quran has several verses like this. Another one as an example, "Glory be to Him who created all the pairs from what the earth produces, and from themselves, and from things unknown to them." And that's taken from Surah 36 verses 36. Moving on now to number 8, we're going to be looking at the female honeybee. Now check this out. Honeybees have 3 various forms. There's a queen bee, that's the reproductive female. Then there's the drone bee, which is the male. And then the worker bees are the non-reproductive females. Each of these have their role. The non-reproductive female bee is responsible for making the honey. And that's what the Quran speaks about in Surah 16 verses 68 to 69. It says as follows, "Your Lord revealed to the bees, build dwellings in the mountains and the trees, and also in the structures which men erect. Then eat from every kind of fruit and travel the paths of your Lord, which have been made easy for you to follow. From inside them comes a drink of varying colors, containing healing for mankind. There is certainly a sign in that for people who reflect." So in this verse, the verbs build, eat, and travel, they're written in the female form in the original Arabic language. But while we're on the topic of bees and honey, we have to mention at number 7 that honey brings healing. In chapter 16 of the Quran is Surah Al-Nahl, and that is translated as the bees in English. In this chapter, specifically in verse 69, this is what it has to say. "Then eat from all of the fruits and follow the ways of your Lord laid down for you. There emerges from their bellies a drink varying in colors, in which there's healing for people. Indeed, this is a sign for those who reflect." So I pretty much just read that in the previous entry, but research now shows that antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties are found in honey. It also helps against infections and in the regrowth of tissue when our body is healing. Honey also contains antioxidants that help to prevent heart problems and cancer. Let's talk about gender at number 6. The Quran states that one's masculinity or femininity is actually created out of a drop of sperm that has been ejected. And the Quran says the following, "He has created both sexes, male and female, from a drop of semen which has been ejected." That's taken from Surah 53 verses 45 to 46. And now it's widely known that human sex is determined by the male's sperm, with the female cells playing really no role in the sex determination process. Another miracle mentioned in the Quran is the alaqah that clings to the uterus. Now, the following is a passage from the Quran. It says, Then we formed the drop into an alaka and formed the alaka into a lump and formed the lump into bones and clothed the bones in flesh and then brought him into being as another creature. Glory be to Allah, the best of creators. This is taken from Surah 23 verses 14. Now, one thing to note is that the Arabic word alaka is used to describe leeches that cling to a body and feed off of the blood inside of the body. And it can be translated to mean a thing that clings to something. So comparing a leech to an embryo at the alaka stage, we can see that there's similarities between the two of them, not just in appearance, but also in function as well. And the word alaka can also be translated as blood clot. And we can see that the appearance of the embryo and its sacs during the alaka stage actually looks like a blood clot. Number 4 brings us humans formed in stages. Human reproduction, as science tells us, it actually takes place in various different stages. And the Quran also mentions this. In Surah 71, God created you in stages. Also, the Quran says He creates you in the wombs of your mothers in stages, one development after another in 3 layers of darkness. That's taken from Surah 39 verses 6. Another pretty interesting miracle found in the Quran is about the prefrontal cortex. So check this out. The front part of the brain is called the prefrontal cortex, and it's responsible for coming up with lies. According to PubMed.gov, people who just lie, known as pathological liars, have more prefrontal white matter. And the Quran said that the disbelievers will be dragged from their lying forehead. In the Quran, Surah 96 verses 15 to 16, we can find a passage that says this, "But no, if he does not desist, he will certainly drag him by the forelock, a lying sinful forelock." Now, this is also translated as forehead. The original Arabic word nasya in this case refers to the frontal lobe of the brain where reasoning is processed, and from there people can come up with lies. Number 2 is also very fascinating. It's talking about bones that are formed before muscles. The first formation of actual bone happens at the jawbone at around 41 days, and then about 3 days later the muscles are formed. And now, we did read the following passage at number 5 in this episode, but there is something else to notice in the passage. Just to recap, it goes as follows. Then we formed the drop into an alaka and formed the alaka into a lump and formed the lump into bones and clothed the bones in flesh and then brought him into being as another creature. Glory be to Allah, the best of creators. So what we can also see in this passage is the sequential formation of bones and flesh. And to end this episode off, we are going to be talking about fasting and its medical benefits. The Quran does mention this in Surah 2 verses 184. It says, "O you who believe, fasting is prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, that you may become righteous, for a specified number of days. But whoever among you is sick or on a journey, then a number of other days. For those who are able, a ransom of feeding a needy person. But whoever volunteers goodness, it is better for him. But to fast is best for you, if you only knew." Nowadays, we know that intermittent fasting has been linked to numerous health benefits. And some of those benefits include reducing the risk of diabetes, reducing inflammation in the body, as well as lowering your blood pressure and also balancing your weight. It, however, is recommended that you consult with a medical professional when it comes to fasting, but studies do show that yes, fasting does have many benefits. So the first thing is the speed of light. Muslims believe that angels are created from light, and the angels communicate the affairs of God, which they get from what is known as a preserved tablet in outer space. And the speed at which they travel to and from this tablet, it turns out to actually be the speed of light. In the Quran, Surah 32 verse 5, it says, "Allah rules the cosmic affairs from the heavens to the earth. Then this affair travels to him a distance in 1 day, at a measure of 1,000 years of what you count." Hence, in one day, the angels will travel a distance of 1,000 years according to the lunar calendar, because that's what Muslims counted at that time. The belief is that God is saying that the angels travel in one day the same distance that the moon travels in 12,000 lunar orbits. 12,000 lunar orbits or Earth days equals the speed of light. Now science shows that. Now the atmosphere protects us is the next thing. So the atmosphere protects Earth from radiation and meteorites. Now this is also portrayed in the Quran 1400 years ago. In the Quran, Surah 21 verse 32, it says, "And we made the sky a protective shield, and they turn away from its sign." The next scientific miracle in the Quran is the female bees are the worker bees. So worker bees are actually all females. Now the Quran refers to bees that generate honey as females. So listen to this. In the Quran, Surah 16 verses 68 to 69, it says, "And your Lord revealed to the bees, build your hives in mountains, trees, and in what they build. Then eat from every fruit and follow your Lord's enslaved paths. From its bellies exists drink of different color, in it healing for man." So in Arabic, the word eat or kuli is for females, and that's used in the Quran. And the term follow a path is the word usluki in Arabic, and that refers to females as well. As also the term its bellies is butuniha, and that's also used for females. The Quran also mentions hearing before seeing. So this is what I mean. So hearing is one of the first senses to develop. Now this is only known in recent history, and it's also mentioned in the Quran. The Quran, Surah 76 verses 2, it says, "We created man from a fertilizing sperm to test him, and we made him hearing and seeing." Also the Quran, Surah 23:78, it says, "It is he who produced for you the hearing and the eyesight and the feelings, but little gratitude you show." So the Quran always refers to the hearing before the seeing, which turned out to be the actual order of human development in the womb. Flight comes in at number 6. So the Quran is also believed by Muslims to have foretold that humans someday would be able to reach the sky. In Surah 29:22, it says, "You cannot escape Allah's might on earth or in the sky, and you have no protector and no savior besides Allah." Also in Surah 84:19, it says, "You will ride one layer from another layer." The word tabak in Arabic means layer in English, and from this came certain myths about flying carpets, but now the flying aircrafts that go up layer upon layer are what we know today. Also, sound waves. According to the University of Washington, the original sound waves were not temperature variations, but they were actual real sound waves spreading around the universe. Now in the Quran, Surah 41 verse 11 indicates this, and it says, "Then he directed himself to the heaven when it was smoke, and then said to it and to the earth, 'Come willingly or by force.' They said, 'We do come willingly.'" So the heaven replying back implies that the heaven had a voice, which would mean it emitted a sound wave. Another miracle Muslims point to is high altitudes affect your breathing. As altitude increases, atmospheric pressures and oxygen levels in the atmosphere actually decrease, which eventually gets to a point where we can no longer breathe. Now we all know this, the higher you go, the harder it is to breathe. Now in the Quran, Surah 6 verse 125, it says this, "Those whom Allah wants to guide, he opens their chests to Islam, and those whom he wants to leave astray, he makes their chests tight and constricted, as if they are ascending to the sky." Bones forming before muscles is also another miracle. Apparently the first formation of actual bones happens in the jawbone at day 41, and about 3 days later, that's when the associated muscles are formed. And in the Quran, Surah 23 verse 14, it says, "Then we develop the semen into a leech, then we develop the leech into a lump, then we develop the lump into bones, then we clothe the bones with flesh, then we produce it into another creature. Most blessed is Allah, the best of creators." Number 2, now we look at the part of the brain responsible for lying. So for centuries, everybody thought that the frontal part of the human brain was responsible for sight, because of course it's at the front of your head. But we know now that the part responsible for vision is actually at the back of the brain. So if you fall back and hit the back of your head, it could affect your sight or make your eyes go cross-eyed. But now science shows us that the frontal part of our brain, or the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for forming intelligent thoughts like creating lies. And Muslims quote the Quran, Surah 96 verse 16, that says, "A lying, sinful forehead, which indicates that lying is happening in the front of your head. Now, number 1, we have planets, stars, and all of the celestial bodies are actually moving. For centuries, it was believed that the Earth was fixed and the sun and the moon and other planets and the stars and all that revolved around the Earth. But an interesting passage from the Quran that the Muslims point to is Surah 39 verses 5, and it says, Allah created the heavens and the earth in truth. He overlaps the night over the day and overlaps the day over the night and enslaves the sun and the moon. All move to a pre-recorded destiny. Miracle number 10 is the color of water. Years ago, people thought that water was just transparent. No one thought that the color of water could actually turn black. But scientists have actually discovered a new characteristic of water. At a higher pressure, the water molecules become half liquid and half solid. Now, what's called superionic water forms in higher temperatures and pressures. It's very dark and thicker than, well, water. And the Quran says that in the heat of hellfire, water actually looks really dark, like tar. It's mentioned in the Quran in Surah 18 verse 29. It says, "We have prepared for the unjust a fire whose curtains will hem them in. And when they cry for relief, they will be relieved with water like tar, which scald their faces." Number 9 is the process of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is a process used by plants and other organisms to convert light energy into energy that they can use. And in the Quran, Surah 18 verse 35, it says, "And cite for them the parable of the present life. It is like water that we send down from the sky. The plants of the earth absorb it, but then it becomes debris scattered by the winds." Now, photosynthesis converts carbon dioxide and water into oxygen and sugar. Most of the water evaporates back into the atmosphere, which the term debris points to in the Quran. Gardens being therapeutic come in at number 8. Reductions in stress, as well as tiredness, depression, anger, anxiety, have all been documented when people actually go into gardens. Engagement with gardens has increasingly been recognized as not only a cost-effective health intervention, but also a treatment or occupational therapy for those with psychological health issues, and this is done with what is called horticultural therapy. Now, this statement comes from the National Center of Biotechnology Information. Gardening is beneficial for health, a meta-analysis published in 2016. And the Quran, Surah 27 verse 60, it says, "Or who created the heavens and the earth, and rains down water from the sky for you. With it produces joyful gardens whose trees you could not produce." Now, the term bahjat means joy or delight in Arabic, and that's the word used. So in this verse, gardens are actually bringing joy or delight, and since today's gardens are being prescribed as a natural antidepressant of sorts, Muslims view this as a miracle. Next up, we have meteorites. So when a meteor enters the atmosphere, the meteor heats up so much that it starts to shine, and then the air burns the meteor, and poof, nothing is left, right? In the Quran, Surah 52 verses 44, it says, "Even if they were to see lumps of the sky falling down, they would say, a mass of clouds." So people would think that they're clouds because of the ashes that are left after the meteor gets like, and Muslims say, yeah, that's a miracle. Miracle number 6 is female spiders spinning webs. It's generally accepted that adult female spiders spin the webs while adult males do not, outside of looking to mate. This is according to Speely, Do Only Female Spiders Build Webs, published in 2019, this year. And in the Quran, Surah 29 verse 41, it says, "The likeness of those who take to themselves protectors other than Allah is that of the spider. It builds a house, but the most fragile of houses is the spider's house, if they only knew." Now, when it says those who take, the term in Arabic is iktakata, and that's for males. Now, iktakatat is for females, and the Quran uses the female version. At number 5, we look at the mountains having roots as well as floating. So the highest point of the earth is in the Himalayas at Mount Everest, standing at 8.8 kilometers high. Now, this mountain has actually 250 kilometers of deep roots. This was recorded in Life Science Depth of Himalayan Mountain Roots Revealed back in the year 2010. Now, the Quran in 2 places says mountains as pegs, as well as it says, "And mountains he anchored. So pegs are used to hold a tent or something in place, and pegs have a part of it above the ground as well as another part that's into the ground, and the Arabic word means anchored, and this is actually a term that applies to ships floating on water, like when they're anchored to land. So similarly, this is how mountains or other landforms really actually float above a semi-molten asthenosphere. Yeah, Google that term, asthenosphere. Female ants come in at number 4. So check this. All male ants have wings. All worker ants are females, and all ants that don't have wings are females. Now in the Quran, Surah 27 verse 18, it mentions this. Until when they came upon the valley of ants, and the ants said, "O ants, enter your homes so that you do not be crushed by Solomon and his soldiers while they do not feel it." Now for the word said, kala is for males and kalat is for females. Now the Quran of course uses kalat for females. So if the ants actually had wings, it would have just flown away. However, they didn't have an option in this context in the Quran, but rather they had to go and hide into their home. So Muslims believe that the ant is correctly addressed as a female in this passage, which they identify as being another miracle. Number 3, the universe is expanding. So scientists today do not know what dark energy actually is, but they do know, however, that it exists and it's causing the entire universe to expand. In the Quran, Surah 51 verse 47, it says, "And the heaven we built with craftsmanship, and we are still expanding." The Quran also said that everything is made of pairs, and today we know that all matter is actually in pairs. So matter and antimatter, electrons and positrons, and so on. And in the Quran, Surah 36 verse 36, it says, "Glory to him who created in pairs all things that the land produces, and their own kind, and other things of that they have no knowledge of." And finally, at number 1, continental drift. So back in the year 2014, the National Geographic published "How do we know the continents are moving?" And this is what they said. 50 years ago, continental drift was a fringe hypothesis rejected by most geologists. Today, the theory of plate tectonics is universally accepted as true and unifies once separate areas of geology under one grand banner. There are mountains of evidence that plate tectonics had taken place in our planet's past. Now, the Muslims point to Quran 27 verses 88, and it says, "You see the mountains and think they are firmly fixed, but they are moving away just like the clouds are moving away."